Some truths are uncomfortable. Some truths make people shift in their seats, avoid eye contact, and change the subject. And some truths, the most vital ones, are deliberately buried. Should they come out, this government will fall and politicians will go to prison. I'm going to share with you 10 facts as simply as I can. First one is the ethnic reality of the rape gangs. Let's be clear from the outset. Nobody denies that most child sex abusers in Britain are white. That's documented and rightly condemned. But here is another fact, one that makes politicians squirm and self-appointed moral guardians froth with indignation. In town after town, over multiple decades, gangs, clans of predominantly Pakistani heritage men have targeted white working class girls for organised sexual exploitation. This isn't my opinion. This isn't speculation. It is evidenced, it is documented, and it is now impossible to ignore. Take Bradford. A recent Freedom of Information request revealed that between 2018 and 2020, 4.4% of all convicted child sexual abuse offenders were recorded as Asian. In a city where Asians make up just 26.8% of the population. Asian, of course, is a broad term, so let's look at it a bit more. Of those Asian offenders, over 84% were of Pakistani heritage. By contrast, white offenders, despite white people making up nearly 64% of Bradford's population, accounted for only 24.5% of convictions. What does that mean? When adjusted for population, Pakistani men in Bradford were 5 times more likely to be convicted of child sexual abuse than white men. This is not about scapegoating. It is about facing a documented pattern taking place in towns and cities across this country. And it is a pattern the authorities are desperate for you not to notice. Fact 2. The clan structures of these crimes cannot be ignored. These crimes were not the actions of isolated individuals. They were organised, deliberate, and connected. This is why we refer not merely to grooming gangs, but to grooming clans. These were extended family and community-based networks, intergenerational and entrenched. Brothers, cousins, uncles, fathers, and even grandfathers paraded together across years, often across county lines. The youngest offenders were teenagers, some still in school or college. The oldest were pensioners. Their operations mirrored the structure and method of mafia-style organizations, with a deeply embedded culture of loyalty, silence, and protection from within the community. Many of these clans had already been involved in drug trafficking, most notably in the Pakistani heroin trade. That's right, these rape clans ran in partnership with the Pakistani heroin gangs. Heroin trades that routed products through Afghanistan and into the UK. The logistics, intimidation, tactics, money laundering methods, and cross-regional coordination used in that trade were seamlessly adapted to trafficking children, little white working class girls. This was not a case of random street level abuse. It was criminal enterprise, and it flourished for generations and flourishes to this day. Fact 3. The cultural precedent. This did not emerge from nowhere. The roots of this mindset, gang raping children, runs deep within the Pakistani culture. In 1947, during the partition of India, there were mass rapes of Hindu and Sikh women by Muslim men, Pakistani men, often justified as religious revenge. It did not stop there. In 1971, during the War for Bangladesh independence, over 200,000 women, and that's the most conservative estimate, over 200,000 women mostly Bengali, were raped by the Pakistani army. The term rape jihad was coined to describe this form of religiously sanctioned, racially targeted sexual violence. We see echoes of that same mindset here. Some of the grooming gang defendants in the United Kingdom have cited religion and cultural justifications for what they did. That didn't just emerge once they came here. They brought that culture with them. They viewed white non-Muslim girls as immoral, impure, and therefore legitimate targets. At a recent conviction, as the sentence was handed down, defendants who'd been convicted for raping children shouted Allahu Akbar in court, a chilling echo of that same contempt for their victims and the justice system. They believe they had a religious right to do what they did, embedded in generations of cultural tradition. Fact 4. Distinct from other abuse, not all child sexual exploitation is the same. Institutional abuse, online exploitation, abuse in the family, these are of course all distinct crimes with different patterns and different perpetrators. What we are talking about here is racially targeted, religiously justified, organized child sexual exploitation, child sex abuse. They don't even regard, most of these men don't even regard these children as children. This is not like any other form of child sexual abuse taking place in this country right now. It's involved grooming, trafficking, gang rape, and systematic abuse by networks of men who often shared not only ethnicity and religion, but also a belief system that dehumanized their victims. It is crucial to acknowledge this distinction, because without naming it, we cannot confront it. Shouting ICSA did this and ICSA did that, the government are wrong. ICSA did not look at this. Move on to fact number 5. Grooming clans, not gangs. The term gang is misleading. Images of loosely affiliated youths on street corners. What we are dealing with are clans. Multi-generational, often interrelated groups that operate with the sophistication and the reach of organized crime syndicates. They span towns, cities, and even countries, coordinating victim movement, exchanging girls, and laundering proceeds through businesses, chicken shops, family homes, even mosques. These networks were often protected by community silence, enabled by local businesses, and overlooked by the very institutions meant to stop them. They used tactics drawn from the heroin trafficking routes, smuggling girls just as they had smuggled drugs. Hidden, silenced, threatened. This was a parallel underworld hiding in plain sight and laughing at a system too paralyzed by fear to confront them. Fact 6. The victims were always the same. The victims, overwhelmingly white, working class girls. Many were from care homes, many were vulnerable, but don't let that mislead you. Not all came from broken families. Some came from stable, loving homes, families that had raised them to be tolerant, open-minded, and welcoming to the Pakistani community. I'm not joking. That's what happened with some of them. They were integrated. They were anti-racist. They did not treat people differently, and that tragically was the mistake that exploited them, that harmed them. These girls had no advocates. When they spoke out, they were called sluts, liars, racists. Teachers dismissed them. Social workers ignored them. Police officers, those who weren't involved in gang raping them or involved in selling them, were later found. Yeah, I'm not joking. That's what some of the police officers did, but they held them in contempt. White working class girls, white trash is how the police officers saw them. Let's look at Manchester. Let's look at Manchester on its own. Operation Augusta brushed them off. The number of victims still undefined because the state refuses to release the true figures. When the investigations come along, files go missing, questions are avoided, investigations are stalled, data is buried. The truth why? These were racially motivated crimes against the white working class, and to this day the government refuses to label them as such. The government to this day refuses to label these as racially motivated crimes. Fact 7. This is not local, it's national. Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, Oldham, Keighley, Newcastle, Bradford, add whichever town you want to the list, add whichever city you want to the list. Different places, same story, same perpetrators, same failures. This was not a local problem. It was a national criminal enterprise. It is a national criminal enterprise. So why has the government refused a national inquiry? Because a genuine national investigation would expose them, not just because a genuine national investigation would expose not just the rapists, but the networks, the enablers, the institutions that allowed them to operate, and the politicians that benefited from it. Instead, each town is told to examine itself as though abuse in one city happened in a vacuum. But these clans, they operated across council borders, county lines and police jurisdictions. How can fragmented, localized reviews uncover a system that was coordinated, national and protected from above? The answer is simple: it can't. And that's exactly why it's being done this way. Fact 8. Why they stayed silent. The authorities didn't fail by accident. Don't make that mistake. They knew, and they chose not to act. Why? Some say fear of being called racist, political correctness, paralyzed investigations. Better let girls be raped than offend community leaders. But that is the easiest of the explanations. It goes darker, deeper. Corruption and complicity. Girls were exchanged for voting blocks. In exchange for turning a blind eye, politicians secured re-election. It was a grotesque pact. Children sacrificed for power. A system unprepared for the truth. These were not crimes the British state understood. The cultural dynamics, the religious justifications, the clan structures. No one wanted to name them, let alone confront them, so they didn't. And for generations, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of girls were gang raped. Fact 9. The cover-up reaches the top. This isn't just a story about local councils or police failures. It is now a story about the British state, because the people who allowed this to happen, who buried reports, intimidated whistleblowers and silenced victims, some of them now sit in Westminster. Some of them sit in the cabinet and Keir Starmer's government. That's why there's no appetite for real justice, because real justice would reach too far up the chain. Even Maggie Oliver, the detective who exposed the scandal in Greater Manchester, has launched her own campaign called They Knew. This isn't about helping survivors or therapy or anything like that. This is a campaign that is pursuing private prosecutions against those the government refuses to hold accountable. Unprecedented, unheard of. So what does that tell you when the former police officers no longer trust the system to deliver justice? Well, it should tell you that the cover-up isn't over. It's still happening, and unless we do something about it, they will get away with what they've done. Fact 10. A racially and religiously motivated crime. Let's call this what it is. This was not random. This was not opportunistic. This was not race blind. It was targeted, racial, and in many cases religiously justified. White girls were described as trash, as slags, as kuffar. They were seen as immoral, unclean, and therefore deserved what happened to them. And in court, after conviction, not only did some of the perpetrators shout Allahu Akbar in repentance or in celebration, no, it was in defiance. That is the mentality we are dealing with. That is what we have to face up to and fight back against. This is not about hate. Before any of my Muslim brethren accuse me of hate, no, this is not about hate. It's about the truth. Let's make one thing absolutely clear. This is not an attack on all Pakistani heritage men. This is not an attack on the faith of Islam. This is not an attack on Muslims, and it most definitely is not an attack on the lazy term of Asians. However, it is an attack on the lie that these crimes had nothing to do with ethnicity, culture or religion, because denying these elements isn't virtue, it's cowardice. When you strip away the uncomfortable truths to protect the feelings or reputations of an ethnic group or religious group, what you're really doing is leaving the next generation of girls unprotected. I'm not here to stoke hate, I'm here to force a reckoning. We need to confront this reality. So the next time someone tells you that speaking about this is divisive or racist or dangerous, ask them a simple question. Who benefits from your silence? Because it's not the girls, it's the rapists, it's the politicians who made deals with their clans, it's the police chiefs who buried the files, it's the councillors who threatened whistleblowers, it's the journalists who looked the other way or even ran hit pieces on whistleblowers. It's definitely the community leaders who protect their reputations and in return get the grants from these council. But whoever it is, it isn't the children. They are the ones who gained from this silence, not the children. And they are terrified that silence is finally breaking. Because once the truth is spoken, clearly, loudly, and without apology, the reckoning begins. And that's what they fear most. Not division, they fear justice.